Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build this Austin Tilly HP10. I'm not sure, but I think the name Tilly comes from utility, this being a utility vehicle. This, as you might guess, is a Rubicon Models kit, which means it's a 28mm scale plastic wargaming kit. I'm not sure I really have a use for this in any of my forces, but since when has that stopped me from putting together a cool kit? The back of the box, as you can see, is pretty typical of a Rubicon box. Some information about the vehicle, a picture of the included decals, and a basic painting guide. Very good. Inside the box we find one sprue moulded in grey plastic, and this has almost all of the parts we'll need to build ourselves one Tilly. The plastic in this kit, as is usually the case with Rubicon's kits, is very neatly moulded and well detailed. I wasn't able to find any defects here, though there are mould lines. I don't think mould lines are anybody's favourite thing, but they're not really a defect. And in the case of this kit, they're really quite minor, and I didn't find myself doing much cleanup at all. As I always say, I'm not a Tilly expert. I do always say that. My friends tell me to stop it, but I won't. So I can't tell you if this is a perfect representation of the real thing, but I do think it's pretty convincing. The level of detail here is really quite high, particularly for a gaming kit. I'm not sure you can tell by looking at the sprue, but there's a handful of different options in the parts here, which I think is always nice. There's also crew figures, which you'll be surprised to learn I didn't use, but they do look pretty good. I did say that the sprue includes almost enough parts to build the Tilly, and that's because this cab is a separate part, and it looks really nice. You don't need me to tell you that, but I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm assuming this is a separate part, so they can do a slightly more complicated moulding for it. That way we get some really nice detail and don't actually have to glue anything together. The same goes for the canvas cover for the rear. I really like how the ropes on this look. I also like that some of the canvas window flaps are rolled up. You don't often see that on these canvas cover parts in any kit, or at least I don't often see it, maybe you do. There's a nice sheet of decals with a wide range of markings, most of which I don't know the meaning of, but I do appreciate having such a variety available. The sheet is labelled UK Trucks Set. That's UK Trucks, you idiot! The sheet is labelled UK Trucks Set, so it's clearly not just for the Tilly, and I'm sure this set would be handy to hold onto after using it for this kit. You never know when you might need one or two of these markings in another project. The instructions are of the high quality I'm used to from Rubicon. They're clear, well laid out, and easily understood. This is not an especially complicated build, so the instructions reflect that. They also point out where the optional parts are and which parts should be assembled first and last, and those notes are highlighted in red so that you don't miss them. You mean like you miss them? Sometimes I miss them because I'm bad. Anyway, let's use these instructions to guide us in our quest to glue bits of plastic together. The wheels seem like a really good place to start, so I did. They don't really require assembly, but there are some hubcaps to attach. The instructions don't actually say that these are optional, but I don't see why they wouldn't be. The box art does show the Tilly without them, so I chose to glue 3 out of the 4 into place. The suspension goes onto the frame next, and thanks to the keying, this is pretty easy to do. Having the axle and both leaf spring suspension things as one part really helps in making this both easy to install and makes it so that everything will line up nice and straight. The front suspension goes on pretty much the same way, just it's on the front. The drive shaft then goes into place here, and I guess this isn't strictly required, but it's pretty effortless to put on, and if your Tilly happened to flip over, and people saw that it didn't have a drive shaft, the mockery would be unending. Onto the 2 fairly obvious mounting doohickeys on the front. Are you sure it's obvious that's the front? Well, if you look at the instructions it is. Anyway, I glue the front bumper on. This comes with a holder for the bridging weight placard thing, which I like. It makes it quite clear where the decal should go later on. The front mudguards go on next. This is a single large part that goes into place nice and easily. The benefit here is that both mudguards will be perfectly aligned without the need for any fiddling or nudging or kajiggering or anything like that. It's nice and easy. The seats are next, and as you can see, there's some fairly obvious guides for these to mount onto. There's not much to this, and it should be pretty difficult to mess up. Cars usually have wheels, so let's add some of those next. These should all be the same, and any wheel should go on any axle. However, I found that some didn't quite fit as easily on some axles as others, though it might be because I didn't remove the mold lines from the axle-y bits well enough. Who can say? What matters is I did get all of the wheels into place, nice, straight and neatly with minimal effort. I feel like the single missing hubcap is a nice touch too. It should add some visual interest when painting. The cargo tray, I guess you might call it, comes next. I use a suitable amount of glue in the hopes that the glue god will smile upon me, and the part pretty much just drops right into place. Then, onto the sides of that, I glued the sides. I sure do have a way with words. These don't quite have keying to lock them into place, but you shouldn't have any trouble finding the right spot. Obviously there's one of these for either side, so do be sure to use the correct part on the correct side. I follow this by adding the tailgate. This is made up of 2 parts, and I think it makes the most sense to add the lower part first. I had to nudge it into place with my knife because my fat fingers couldn't get in there, but this isn't difficult to get on. The gate part of the tailgate then goes into place above that. The hinge part works as a guide, and you could model this up or down or anywhere in between if you wanted. As you might be able to tell, I've chosen up, and the result is a nice tilly butt. Now I turn my attention to the cab. Is it called a cab on this kind of vehicle? Whatever. Into this rather nice part, I glue the dashboard, and it's pretty easy to figure out where that should sit. Because we like our wheels, let's add one of the steering variety. There's a fairly obvious mounting point for this, and if you're like me, with fat fingers, you may find tweezers to be quite helpful here. The Radiator Grille comes next, and there are 3 choices here. I chose this one with what looks to be some little rolls or bags or something, some sort of stowage, because I thought it looks the most interesting of the 3. The bonnet comes next. This is a British vehicle, so it's a bonnet, not a hood. You may need to do a bit of nudging, but this isn't hard to position nice and neatly atop the engine area. On the roof, we mount a spare wheel, and there are 2 of these to choose from. I've opted for the one with the canvas cover, or I'm assuming it's canvas, but there's also one without the cover. I figured this one would look a bit more interesting when it was painted. Behind the spare wheel, I mount a shovel. I had to eyeball this because there isn't anything to guide it, and because of that, I'd say if you didn't want the shovel for any reason, you could omit it quite easily. I think my crew will dig having a shovel to play with though, so I put it on. The headlamps come next, and while these are small kind of fiddly parts, they're not too hard to install. You might find tweezers to be helpful, but I was able to get them on using my fat fingers. I would suggest that it might be a good idea to leave these off until the cab is in place on the frame, just to eliminate the risk of damaging them, but as you can see, I was able to install the cab without causing any damage. This did need a little bit of kajiggering to get it into place. It doesn't just drop right in, and you'll need to use a small amount of force on it. It's nothing too challenging though. I mean, I did it and I didn't break anything, so anybody could do it. I glue this into place, and some might have a problem with that because the interior's not painted yet. However, the cab doesn't have a back wall, so you could get your brush in there and be all painty relatively easily. The trick here really is just don't glue the rear cover thing into place, or if you want, leave the cab off until you've painted it. Do your models in whichever way suits you best. Next, I add a pair of seats into the rear section. Not only are these seats optional, but you get a choice between 2 different styles of seat, and as you can tell, I've chosen this kind. It probably has a name, but I don't know what it is. There's no keying here, and you probably shouldn't need it, and I would imagine the reason for that is these are optional, so it looks neater to not have any keying for those who don't want the seats. I position them where I think the instructions want them, and I think they look pretty good. The final thing to do is assemble the canvas cover for the cargo, or I guess passenger area. As I understand it, the cover is optional, and if you don't want to use it, there's a part that should mount behind the cab. I think the canvas part looks too good not to use though, so I'm going to use it. There's a piece of canvas that goes on the front of this nice and easily, and onto the rear, another canvas part. There's 2 parts you could choose from here, the one I've installed with the flap rolled up, or the one with it closed. I figured that if I'm going to paint the inside, the more visible it is the better. All of these parts, like the rest of the kit, go into place nice and easily, and the result is quite a good looking canvas thingy, whatever you might call it. Again, I really like how the ropes holding it in place look. When test fitting the part, I wasn't sure if there should be such a big gap between the canvas and the cab, because it doesn't quite look right to me, but then I'm no tilly surgeon, so what would I know? If it is an issue, I'm sure it wouldn't be too hard to correct with putty. I've left that part unglued to make painting the inside easier, though I won't be doing that for a while, so don't expect to see a tilly painting video anytime soon. Anyway, with that, the Austin HP10 Tilly in 28mm scale by Rubicon Models is now completed. I think this is a really awesome looking little model. I mean, I'm not surprised, Rubicon stuff is very good and is only getting better and better. It's so crisp and neat looking. I can't tell you if all the details are super accurate or whatever, something might be out by a millimeter or something and I would never know, but not being a rivet counter, I don't care. Also, this is primarily a wargaming piece, though I would say that it would also work very well as a display model. The point I'm trying to make is that this is very nice indeed. Like I mentioned earlier, I'm not sure if there's a use for this in games like Bolt Action. Maybe it could be used like a Jeep or something. Or maybe you could make a house rule to have 4 guys just cruising around the battlefield doing sick jumps. That makes a lot of sense to me. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. It doesn't really matter. It looks so good that I'm willing to have it in my force, even if it serves no purpose at all. I really enjoyed building this little kit. It was a lot of fun. It's another one of those nice, quick kits that I was able to put together in one relatively short stream. For those not being distracted by all the things inherent to streaming, you could probably whip this together really quickly, but why rush? I always recommend taking your time, you'll make less mistakes that way, but you'll also get to enjoy the hobby. Being that this is a wargaming kit, it's not especially difficult to put together. I would say the hardest part was probably kajiggering the cab into place, and that really wasn't very hard. Anyway, I might be waffling a bit, so in short, I think this is a really cool kit, and it gets a hearty thumbs up from me. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to put them in the comments section below. If you've built one of these or any other cool models and you want to share, why not drop by our friendly Discord community and show us some pictures? We would love to see what you've done. If you want to watch me build kits like this live, head on over to my Twitch channel, the link to which is in the description below. If you've not already done so, why not subscribe for free, follow, ring the bell, consider becoming a patron if you'd like to see my videos a bit early, or maybe just come say hi on Discord or Twitch next time I'm live. And if you're feeling really helpful, why not share this video with your friends and family or anybody you think might get something out of it. You can find links to all of my things like social media in the description below. And, as always, I shall return soon. So until then, be excellent to each other, have an amazing day, and thanks for watching. Farewell.